Thank you for joining us. If you are joining us for the first time today, hello, and we greet you on behalf of D Free Global Foundation Incorporated. Just to go over a few housekeeping rules if you are coming with us for the first time. As a reminder, you are registered for the conference. However, you do need to select which sessions you would like to attend. We encourage you to attend all of these sessions. So if you look under the sessions tab, you just select your session and you will be added to the session and we will have you as a special guest. We appreciate you. We also want to encourage you that while you're watching the sessions, we encourage you to have an interactive conversation with us. There is a Q&A section where you can ask questions pertaining to the session or otherwise. And there's also a chat section. They're both located on the right side of your computer, and it is in the control panel and available to all registrants. In addition, there are opportunities for you to network with other attendees in our networking section. Please go in and say hello, introduce yourself. We want to make sure this is an interactive, immersive experience for each one of you. Lastly, we encourage you to visit our expo space. In our expo space, you will be able to interact with our partners and our sponsors. We have people representing each there. You will be able to get more information about D-Free as well as Billion Dollar Challenge and ways to get involved in D-Free and ways to bring D-Free to your organization or your church. So we encourage you to visit all of those sites. Now, let us prepare ourselves for our next engaging conversation. The next group of people that we'll be hearing from are so needed in our community. We want to find out how faith leaders are able to share their insights on how the church is responding to the crises of today. We have with us the next section, which is Progress from the Pulpit. That will feature Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown from Cathedral International in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, Pastor Trevor Hyde, he's from Berean Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York, and all the way from Toledo, Ohio, we have Pastor Talmadge Thomas from the city of Zion. After you hear from our pastors panel, the next thing you will hear is a conversation, a Q&A, with our Deputy Director, Janiyah Lake, and our Executive Director, Tamika N. Stembridge, Esquire. That will be an interactive conversation and Q&A for all of you to participate in. Lastly, we encourage you to listen to some of these testimonials that we have. We are fortunate to not only engage with churches and organizations, but we also like to know about the impact of D-Free on individuals. And so on this next panel, which is for us, by us, individuals who are making an impact, D-Free participants will share their stories of going from tragedy to triumph with D-Free. We have with us Reverend Mignon Jones Spann from Antioch Missionary Baptist Church in San Antonio, Texas. We also have with us Priscilla Rose from Friendship Missionary Baptist Church in Vallejo, California. We have with us Laura L. Washington from the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, also known as NARAB, and she's their Civic Engagement Chair. And last but not least, Tanita Johnson, who will be representing Prudential's Black Leadership Forum, also known as BLF, and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Please continue to join us.
All right. Hello and welcome back to From Crisis to Clarity, a Cultural Shift. I'm Tamika Stembridge, Executive Director of the D-Free Global Foundation, here with my assistant, Erin. Welcome to COVID-19 territory. I do have my co-host here. I'm so excited to have her. Janiyah, you there?
I'm here. Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Excellent. We are here talking about Progress from the Pulpit. We are joined by three amazing faith leaders. Reverend Dr. Danielle Brown from Cathedral International in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. Pastor Trevor Hyde from Berean Baptist Church in Brooklyn, New York. If I was Dr. Stories, I'd say Brooklyn, stand up, because he's so excited about Brooklyn. And Pastor Talmadge Thomas from the city of Zion in Toledo, Ohio. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys for joining us. So listen, we won't waste any time. I want to dive right in and just say we're in the middle of several dynamic events. I could call them crises. I could call them the pandemic, social injustice, all of that. How are you guys managing as faith leaders yourselves during this time? So in essence, how are you? How are you doing?
Ladies first, Dr. Brown.
Okay. Well, I think at this point, I have finally reached some rhythm, right? Some level of rhythm. Initially, the first month and a half, it was kind of, let's just dive in and do everything that we can to make sure that the people are okay, that the church, the ministries of the church are still functioning, and that we don't miss a beat. Because of that, I had to set a number of boundaries around my schedule and my time and just what I'm willing to do and when. And even right now, I'm on vacation. There's not much you can do in a COVID vacation, but at least, and so 4 months later, I just decided that I needed to, stop everything and take some time away, just because it is. This has been a really, really intense period of time, and so not just programming, but also grief and loss.
Yeah.
I have done 18 funerals during this time, not all COVID related, but absolutely COVID impacted. And so that has changed a whole communal dynamic and Black church, our pastors, as a pastor, our role in that grief moment is pretty central, and this time has changed all of that. And so to answer your question, overall, I'm doing pretty good, but still trying to feel the way. And because there's no absolutes, no definites in sight, now trying to pace myself for the long haul.
Well, thanks for making sure that you took some time out for yourself. I think that's really important.
No problem.
Pastor Hyde or Pastor Thomas, either of you?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, jump.
Go ahead. Okay.
No, jump. Go ahead, jump.
I'll jump in. So I'm doing much better than I was when COVID first hit. I don't think anyone anticipated this to be this large and this devastating, nor for it to last this long. As a church, we've already decided that we most likely won't open our church until 2021, just because of the demographic that we have, a much older congregation, more high risk. So we went ahead and just made the call early. Initially, when COVID hit, we are a traditional church. We didn't use a lot of technology. It was a lot of in-person everything, right? In-person meetings, in-person worship. So I had to then switch us over to a technological way of doing things, right? I was staying up until 5 a.m. for the first month, every single day. 5 a.m., 6 a.m., trying to get it right, trying to find the systems, put them all in place. And in doing that, I was just filled with so much anxiety. There was one night where I couldn't sleep. I felt like I needed to go to the hospital because there was just so much death around me. There was so much uncertainty around me. And frankly, I was scared. And when you're dealing with the unknown, being honest, that's just what happens sometimes. People were walking outside and then falling dead. It was a very difficult time. But what it did for me was it really forced me to get into this space of faith-seeking understanding, right? I really began to talk to God in a different way, asking God to give me wisdom, understanding, knowledge on how to really get the right perspective on COVID. And as I began to kind of increase my prayer life, my anxiety began to go down somewhat. And I'm doing much better now. I'm going for walks. I'm going to the park. I go outside again. So I'm doing well, and I hope to go on a vacation, as Dr. Brown has given us a wonderful example, even if it means not doing much. But right. I think it's needed, and I'm doing much better. What is this, 4 or 5 months later now than I was back in March.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent.
Well, confession is good for the soul, bad for the reputation. I hit a wall, y'all. I did. Literally the first 2-3 weeks, I was good. Month in, didn't know exactly how long it was going to last. And with a daughter who has sickle cell, everything is heightened for me. So with that being said, I had to recalibrate. My rhythm was off. My sleep was off. Everything, and I mean everything was off. But as I learned that, listen, this is going to be a faith walk just as much for me as it is for the people I serve. I settled in. And like Pastor Hyde, I'm walking every morning before 8 o'clock, 4 miles. And listen, I determined this is going to be my best year ever. And I say this because it is forced. While forced into this space, I'm going to make the best of space that I can financially, in every way. So I'm better now. I don't have it down. I don't know that you get this down simply because of the fluidity of the moment and what have you, and adjusting. I'm a touchy person, so not having a hug and what have you for a long time. Listen, I was going mad. But anyway, nevertheless, I'm better. I'm learning that it's okay to not be okay and admit it. And I have learned to be a little bit more transparent with not only God, but with the people that I serve. Because I feel like as a leader, if we don't feel this, then we really can't lead them through this. So I'm learning to share some of my flaws a little bit better. And I'm gonna do this. I'm not taking a vacation, Dr. Brown or Pastor Hyde. I'm doing a staycation. Vacation is when you go away and they pay you. Staycation is when you go away and you don't get paid. I'm gonna do a staycation somewhere in town, on the outskirts of town. I've been here 20 years, and this is my 20th year celebration. I don't have an anniversary every year, so all of that kind of stuff for me. So I'm determined. I'm gonna find a place and I'm gonna do a staycation.
Excellent. I thank you for your transparency. This was really for us, we don't necessarily, we see you all as faith leaders from the pulpit all the time and kind of in that, that leadership role. So to really have this point of levity is really important for our participants. So I really appreciate that. Janiyah, you have the next question.
Yeah, I was going to say this is really good because it a lot of people I talk to too were in this moment of reimagining doing the things. So to your point, funerals, how do we still support and grieve and do things that can show what we're still feeling and still doing while we can't congregate together. So it's been innovative time to kind of reimagine how to those things. So it's really good. Is there like one or two aha moments or moments of clarity that you've had during this time? You guys have shared a lot that you've learned, but has there been like this aha moment or a moment of clarity that happened for you so far?
We seem to have an order, Pastor Hyde, so I'm
going to jump in again. So I had a few aha moments as well. One of them was more of a psychological one, in understanding how increased anxiety in one area decreases anxiety in another area. So when I'm not afraid of something on my left, I'm afraid of something on my right. But if something on my left is bigger than what's on my right, I completely forget about what's on my right. So technology was a huge thing for us. I mean, our congregation just really wasn't into technology, very anxious towards it, didn't want to even consider much use of it. But when COVID hit, we were able to switch our entire platform over in the span of 3 days. And we got our people on Zoom, got our people on Givelify, got our people on online. We do join membership online now. You can go on our website and join if you want to become a member. So the rate at which people switched over was very, very rapid. So I just learned and understood the next time that I want folks to really buy into the vision, I just got to scare them in a real way and get them to buy into what I need them to do. The other thing was just learning how little we need to really do meaningful work in our ministry. I read a quote one time that says, we are on this never-ending journey towards excess. And COVID has really helped me to understand from a ministry perspective that a lot of the bells and whistles that we were dying for and thought that we needed, our folks really don't need. Since COVID, we've done a prayer call for the last 130 days or so. We've been praying every single night. And the level of pastoral care that goes along with that, the appreciation that has come out of that is much more than what I have seen in trying to do some of the larger aspects of ministry. So really just understanding what meaningful ministry looks like when you trim the fat has been a huge aha moment for me. People do not want us to end the prayer call. We've been praying God knows how long, and I made a suggestion. I said, listen, August is normally our time of rest, and we're gonna rest. They didn't. I mean, I got some pushback, right, on saying we're not gonna pray every single night. So I had to go back and remodel what I was gonna do in August, because I realized the level of anxiety of not having that contact, right, not seeing someone's face for many of our seniors was huge. So now we're going to do a revival throughout August, every single Tuesday, and prayer and praise on Wednesday, just to keep them connected, but also impressing upon them the importance of, you have to get back to some sense of normalcy. I don't want you in this space of anxiety for the next 5-6 months or so. And the third thing was just generosity. We did a couple of financial drives, one for COVID-19 relief fund, and we were able to raise $8,000 in like 5 minutes, which was just, it blew my mind. So just seeing again what being in that space of anxiety it did for our people, it really brought out the best in them. And I was just so overwhelmingly pleased at what I saw God doing inside of them during this time, that I brag on them as much as I get the opportunity to.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump right in on the coattails of Pastor Hyde as it relates to generosity. It was a truly, honestly, I've been here 20 years at this particular assignment. And just a week or two ago, first Sunday in July, we had the largest giving Sunday we've had in probably 10 or 12 years. And that was an aha moment for me, because I'm thinking it's 4th of July weekend, even though people can't really go places, they just choose, they're shopping online. So I kind of condition myself, as well as my financial team, to say, okay, well, you know, it's summer, all of those things. God blew my mind. So the thing about this for me is that God is in control of everything. And we did not shut the church down because of resources or lack thereof, and we will not open it for resources. If they don't give another dime, I'm going to ride this out with God. That was truly phenomenal. The second thing I think that was an aha moment for me was my first funeral. And it wasn't COVID related, but given the fears of what we didn't know about COVID, so how would I minister to this particular family who had been really in our ministry for about 18 of my 20-year tenure here, and beloved woman of God, and yet how would we handle it? And so realizing that we've got to do, and the seminary and school didn't teach me how to handle it. That was an awakening for me. I'm like, no class that I took in school or anywhere, there was no class on COVID-19. So realizing that in my inadequacies or insufficiencies, I was just as prepared as anybody else. That was an aha moment for me. The last thing was the people that I have been paying, I probably shouldn't have been paying. And the people I need to pay, I got to pay now. The people, the money, reallocating resources toward our social media platforms, our technology, and what have you, because we realize we're not, and I use this term lovingly, competing against other churches, but we're not just competing with the platforms in Toledo, but we're competing with platforms around the world. And it really hit home to me, I'll say yesterday, when one of my beloved members says, well, you know, I went to 4 churches this time. I don't know how many churches I'm going to go to next time. So I realized that in this space, the quality of your presentation has got to be one of excellence. And so knowing who to pay now, some people might get a pay cut, you know, but whatever. But anyway, I'll reallocate the resources to where it's impacting the people in a nice way.
So for the aha moments, then if we kind of look to the flip side, and I love all of your aha moments because if we flip on your aha, we think of have been some of the biggest challenges. I know we've talked about funerals and we've talked about, you know, not being able to be together. And we've had some additional challenges. What have been some big challenges for you all as you went through this time?
Are we keeping our order?
Of course, Doc. Of course.
So I think there are the typical challenges, right? That predate COVID, right? And that I don't think they didn't disappear with the onset of COVID, right? And that is the clash or of culture and faith, right? All of those things, pastoring and leading in a society where the connection or relationship with the church is very different. But I think more than ever, the consumer nature of the church pre-COVID has really shown itself in this COVID reality. Right, because some of the transactional things, right? Pastor Thomas talked about quality of broadcast or the presentation, right? Or that there are members who have said, like, hey, I went to 4 churches today. And so we really have no way of even filtering what our people are taking in. And I think as a pastor, when you are concerned that people are getting sound ministry and that they're, you know, or as a congregation, I am a champion, I say it all the time, for the local church, right? I think that God assigns pastors to people, right? And maybe what one church is doing may not work for another because that's not the flow that God has or the direction that God has for that group. And now you have your members who are at the internet, and if they're watching on Facebook Live, then 10 minutes or 10 seconds into them watching your broadcast, a little thing is going to pop up and say, Trevor Hyde has gone live, right? And
Right.
to click on that, and then 10 seconds into them watching Pastor Trevor's broadcast, now it says Thomas has gone live. And so they're clicking that. And so there's no way even to monitor or know, right? So you have 2,000 people and they're watching whatever, right? You have no idea what people are taking in. But then all of that ultimately does come back when they have questions of faith. I'm getting so many messages in email and inbox about, well, Pastor, I heard, so-and-so say this, particularly about COVID and then with the perfect storm of COVID and then even this uprising. And just kind of reawakening to the fact that racism has gone nowhere and people having to deal with that reality. But now our congregations are hearing 20 different people give commentary, whereas in person, they weren't doing all that, right? When they weren't on platforms. This other thing is also dealing with that's been a challenge. And I'm not sure what we can do with that because people clearly have free will and agency to watch what they choose on their own devices. But then this part, dealing with the pressure of a social media reality where there is an expectation, often from people, that because everybody else is doing it, you have to do it too. So if every other church is having a drive-by testing, then surely you have to have a drive-by testing. If everyone else is doing parking lot worship, surely you have to also, never mind the fact that you don't have a parking lot that could accommodate, right? You don't even have parking enough for Sunday morning, right? Let alone, not trying to park cars in a parking lot and try to have church, right? So I think contending with that expectation, right? The kind of monkey see, monkey do model of ministry, that is contrary to this idea of local churches and doing what God has called you to do, and just kind of battling the personal pressure, right, for pastors, and then also the expectations of people that because they saw it on the internet, another church did it, that you have to do it. And so I've been saying it's okay for every church and every pastor to be an original. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing, but you can pray and do what works for you. And some of the things that you'll do are not things other people have done. And that's completely fine. So those are two things, just contending with expectation because of this exposure to a multiplicity of ministries and things, and then also kind of gatekeeping with your people. We just don't know what our people are ingesting, but we're having to answer the questions that they formulate because of this overexposure.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I'm experiencing the same thoughts as well. One of the things that I've tried to lift up to our leaders is we're excited about who we see, but are we thinking about who we don't see? So our worship platform is done on Zoom, right? All of our members call in on Zoom, and pretty much that's the platform. So I'm a numbers guy. I look at the numbers, I look at the lines that are calling in, and the biggest question that I have is, do these lines reflect what we would normally see when we were actually having in-person worship? And based on my calculations, they don't, because you have people calling in from different states, people calling in from different places. So your numbers aren't really reflecting what you would see on a Sunday morning. So the question becomes, where are our folks? And how are we going to get in contact with our folks to let them know what we're doing, let them know that we're still here, and to ensure that we are providing the spiritual nourishment that you would want to provide as a pastor to your people. The other challenge that I saw was we talk about Jesus going up into the high mountain with Peter, James, and John, and being transfigured. And they wanted to stay on that mountain, right? And Jesus is like, I got to go back down and minister into these different cities. So what I'm trying to do now is making sure that we don't see this new model as it, right? But we are still re-envisioning what church is going to look like, because church is much bigger than a worship service on Zoom. And what we cannot do is recreate the same thing that we had before, just in a virtual space. Because what we had before had its issues and its challenges and needed constant working and reworking. So let's not put it in a new container and think that we have this new wonderful thing. It isn't. So consistently letting them know that we can't stay here, but we've got more places to go, more work to do, more things that we need to re-envision, so that we can grow into what I believe God is calling us to grow into, helping them to understand that church will never be the same in my estimation. It just will never be the same. And for the church that isn't having critical conversation around its ministries, around how it functions, around what it is going to do over the next 2 to 3 years, you are missing a great opportunity, because now the people's ears are open, they're willing to try, and you have to be the one to make sure that they are not falling into this space of, well, this is the new how we've always done it, right? And this is how it's going to be done going forward. So making them uncomfortable, which is why personally I said we're going to fall back on the prayer call and come back a little later on. It's to let them understand that there is no one trick pony. There is no silver bullet here. We are in a season of trying to ask God, what is it that you want us to see from month to month, from week to week, so that we don't lock you in. And one of the things that I'm teaching in Bible study is that God is always trying to escape the institutionalized church, right? God is always trying to get back out of the church, and we find a way to lock God back in. And this time I don't want us to lock God back in. So we're gonna keep trying new things. We're gonna keep pushing the envelope, and we're gonna keep praying.
Excellent.
Well, first for me, the biggest challenge, and I always start with me, is remaining true to what God said to me and resisting the temptation to do what somebody else is doing because somebody else is doing it. And making sure that I'm hearing and pinning my ear to God's mouth to hear what he's saying to me, TJ, as what to do with City of Zion, regardless of who goes back in when, and not only just resisting that for me, but trying to make sure that our people don't get anxious as it relates to when are we going to go back in the building, and yet put our emphasis more so on how do we remain out. Because we are a community church. We do a lot of things in the community, and I really feel like if the church is impacting the community that it's in, it ought to get out. So with that being said, for these years, we've developed that kind of ministry. So one of the challenges also has been reimagining, reinventing how we do community ministry with the protocols that COVID brings. So we've been feeding every Wednesday and Saturday for 18 years. Well, we can't have them coming in the building and sitting down anymore. So we had to reimagine, how do we do that? So the challenge was, how do we do that? And we came up with a pack and go. So I had to change my team, because the team that we had that was really providing the services every week, they're mature, they're elderly. So I didn't want to expose them. And so we got a new team, which was amazing, because we had people who were quote unquote on the sideline of ministry. Now they're on the front line. So even with that challenge and the challenges, we've been to rise to the challenge and overcome some of them. So I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you. It's so rich. I think we could go on, there's so much, so many jewels you guys are sharing with. But if we get into the kind of thread that brought us all together here. So if we get into D-Free, how has D-Free been able to support your work, not only during COVID, but, social justice work, the demonstrations, the things that our communities are faced with right now? How has D-Free been able to support your work in both of those spaces?
Well, about 2 years ago, we took our church through D-Free. We did a 14-week session. We used it during our Bible study. So for 14 weeks, we took people through D-Free, and you'd be surprised. There were a number of younger people who participated in that class. And over the last several weeks, I have gotten messages and had conversations with folks who are saying, I am so glad that I bought into D-Free before now. Right, because when their income or their travel, or we have a few folks who have businesses that relate to catering, and when all of those things dried up and they were left with one income or their main source of income only, they were able to apply these principles of saving and becoming, debt free. So they did not have this huge elephant or this huge, cloud like looming over them, because they had already or applied principles of D-Free. What we're doing now, I told you guys about the Faith and Fitness Challenge. Now we're doing, for the month of July, faith, fitness, and finance. And for 31 days in July, we're actually using Dr. Sori's new workbook, Say Yes When Life Says No. And they actually just came through, I think it's chapter 16, 17, and 18 that deal directly. Now, the whole thing, like indirectly, but leads up to kind of sets the stage for this financial wellness. And then I think it is days 16, 17, and 18 are specifically talking about your financial goals. And so now it's giving our people an opportunity Two, to kind of reimagine, even financially, right? They're making better decisions, even about financial risk in a pandemic, right? When there's uncertainty, what things am I going to do? Getting a hold of that compensatory spending, that because I'm anxious, right? Because I have anxiety over here, I can get on the internet while I'm in church, right? Watching church on one panel, but in the other, I'm shopping on Amazon, right? And buying things that I don't need. And so it really has been a blessing that we did it when we did, because now those principles of D-Free, and then going through this workbook, they're kind of reimagining what finances look like, reimagining what financial goals need to look like, and then having a handle on some of these spending things that are not expedient, right? In the middle of a pandemic with so much uncertainty and just not knowing, right, when we're going to come out of this, to hear folks say, I'm so glad that I had my emergency fund. Right, not just my emergency fund, but I have been saving, or I have been investing. I've had people say, Pastor, I have, I've invested. I've taken this time, and now that I'm not traveling, or I'm not eating out, or spending on these things because of the pandemic, I just decided to take that money and invest it. And so my investments my investment portfolio has grown. So that has been a blessing. And sometimes even as pastors, right, you think that, hey, we're doing this and we're not kind of seeing the fruit. And so 2 years later, to hear folks refer back to what they learned in a class in the middle of a crisis, it's almost like delayed blessing. One of those, my mentor says, God kisses you in public. That's kind of what that is. It's one of those moments where God says, hey, remember, when I told you to do this and you did it and you weren't sure if there was impact, but now in this, it really has been a blessing to a number of our people, and I appreciate, I want all people to be blessed, but especially that D-Free was a tool that younger adults also have been able to say, look, I applied this, I listened, and now it's blessing me in this crisis season.
Excellent.
So for me, D-Free laid a lot of the groundwork to have the conversations about money. We did the same thing about 2 years ago. We brought in Dr. Sories. Actually, we did a whole entire revival around financial wellness. And Dr. Sories was the preacher for the week. And right after the revival, we launched D-Free. And since that time, the stories have just been phenomenal. People have paid down credit card debts. Credit scores have shot up significantly. In fact, I was speaking to a young adult 2 weeks ago, and she has gone from having 5 or 6 credit cards that had outstanding balances to now being on the verge of having a $15,000 surplus with all credit cards paid off. So this has been just a transformational experience in the life of our church, and it opened us up to have greater and deeper conversations around finances, talking about investments, talking about where are you in your savings. There was one time I had one parishioner come into my office and literally put all of her financial statements in front of me, saying, your class has convicted me and I need to get better. There were 401ks, there were Roth IRAs, there were investment accounts, and she was doing pretty well for herself. And even though she was doing well, there was something in the information found in the D-Free manual that convicted her to say, I want to be a better steward over what I have, and I want to be better at managing my finances. So D-Free has been a tremendous blessing in our ministry. I've used it 2 or 3 times. It has allowed for me to bring in other professionals to talk deeper about estate planning, about investing 101, about retirement. So it really opens up the door, not only for conversation, but for healing in the area of financial trauma and financial mismanagement. and has been a blessing for everyone that has gone through the course. So thank you to Dr. Soaries, and thank you to the D-Free team.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm behind simply because I heard about D-Free through Pastor Bruce Farr in Indianapolis. I preached for him a couple years ago. He was talking about D-Free, and I listened, and I think I even bought the book. However, my last engagement in 2020 was with Pastor Farr, and he was telling me how they had paid down and the $1 billion challenge, and it really connected. So while I said I feel like I'm behind, I know timing is everything. But what that conversation did for me, as not just a pastor, but as a person, it made me really look at finances and spending in a very different way. So what D-Free has done for me, it has become my lens. I see everything through the lens of D-Free because I believe, as my mentor, Dr. Brown says, every spending decision is a spiritual decision. And so I am excited, y'all, to go on the $1 billion pay down and make a payment. I have paid my car off this month. Hallelujah. So with that being said, and I'm looking forward to, I'd set a goal personally to be out of debt only with my house before the end of the year. Well, God be praised, I will be out of debt before the end of the year. And it's been because of I believe the tool that D-Free is. It is a tool that not only is transforming me personally, but we've created a D-Free team. We have a team where we meet, and I didn't abdicate it. And I think that was one of the best things I did, was not to pass it on to my team, but to participate in it. And so we're creating classes for our church online, as well as looking forward to how we can transform our community through D-Free. I'll say this and then I quit. I picked up a piece called The Narrow Road by Pamela Jolly. And in it, she talks about in 1619, people of African descent were the only people that came to this country as an asset already. But she said by 2020, by now, we need to not just be an asset, but go from being an asset to owning the assets. So that has really begun to transform the way I see spending. Those are, and the book, there's a term, and I said I was going to remember it, but is it leaking? What is it? Financial leaks? That's a nice term. Boy, that term. So I shared it with my members. I'm like, look, are y'all leaking? Don't stop all that leaking, and just thinking about overdraft fees, just thinking about insufficient fund. I mean, $40 times 3, that's a lot of money. So with that being said, it has literally transformed me as a person, but then as a pastor, to make sure that we are leading people. And Pastor Hyde, I was never afraid to talk about money. It was this D-Free just gave me liberty, license, and leeway. They're your 3 L's. Y'all can preach this, to do it in a way that I think gives God praise and brings glory to the kingdom.
Excellent. Thank you. Those are all excellent. So as we close out here, we think about folks that are watching, and so much information you all have shared today. What would you give as little tidbits as they leave this session, from if they're moving from crisis to navigating, any advice that you would share with our audience as we close out?
Well, I would say, if you have not used any of the D-Free resources in your congregation, now is a really good time to do so. You can add it to your Zoom platform, because people are going to, this time is difficult. It is difficult financially. Our nation, even our nation financially, the financial future of our nation for the next several years is uncertain. And so that's one I would encourage. That's my commercial for D-Free, is that I would encourage people to utilize one of the tools in their programming and in their spiritual care for their congregations now. And then just be encouraged. There's no one alive who has ever pastored or led or lived through a pandemic like this. So there's no right way, there's no wrong way to do it. And right or wrong, we won't know until the other side of this, right? And look back and say, hey, we kind of did pretty good in that. So be kind to yourself. And I would encourage, I think about Mark, the 8th chapter, when Jesus is going about doing Jesus things and healing and teaching. And then in the 8th chapter, he looks and he says, wait, these people have been following me for a long time. And I can't send them home hungry. I can't send them home being a bad representation of what it means to follow me, right? But then the disciples say, well, how are we going to feed all of these people in the wilderness? And Jesus doesn't entertain the questions, but he asks, well, what do you have? Right? Here's the encouragement that I want to offer people is that you have something. And we understand that wilderness is not a place that's conducive for the production of bread or increase. But when Jesus is in the mix and you're willing to take what you have and offer that to Jesus and work with Jesus, it becomes more than enough. You may not be able to see how you'll provide or how you will do ministry and everything in this season or in this time of very much a wilderness, right? But just keep Jesus in the mix and then keep your hands open, whatever you have. Keep them open to offer them over to Jesus to do what Jesus does. And often that is the miraculous, that we do the practical and he does the miraculous. And at the end of it all, people end up having, in that story, they end up being filled to the overflow. They get to take home plates, right? And so that's the kind of God that we serve. And I really believe that if we do the same, follow that same model, that on the other side of this pandemic, people will be taking home plates too.
Thank you.
So I am a homeowner, and the other day, for some reason, whatever the reasons, my bathroom sink, it refused to drain. Turn the water on, the sink just began filling up with water. I then had to find Drano and some other pieces to pour down the drain, to open up the drain, so that the drain and the sink overall can do what I needed it to do. I say that to say this. Because the sink needed some care, it became useless to those who needed it the most. I had to put the sink out of service and open up the drain so that the sink can do what the sink needed to do, and that everyone who went to the sink got what it needed from the sink. So to every pastor, most of us are highly driven individuals, and we will run ourselves in the ground to provide for the context to which we were called. But if you become a clogged drain, or if you become a useless pipe, you become useless to those who come to you for what they need. So I encourage you during COVID-19 to take some time to engage in self-care, to rest, to take it easy, to remind yourself that you are human, and even Jesus took time to get away and be with God. Don't hurt yourself and become useless to those who need to come to you to get something that is useful to them and that will allow them to go about their day in a good way. Unclog your drains, make sure that the water can go down, and make sure that you don't need to be taken out and replaced because you did not take the time to take care of yourself. That is all I have to say on that.
Well, this is so unfair. I need their Cash App so I can Cash App them some offering money, because you know what? And we could just close out with what they said. But but I echo and ditto much of what Dr. Brown and Pastor Hyde have said. I would leave with this: continue to be fluid and flexible during this new abnormal, as Maurice Watson says. this is not the new normal yet, because we're very much in the middle, in a flux. As we get through to another point in place, because we thought, none of us thought this would go this long, and it seems like with cases rising, we're going backwards as opposed to forward. I would say become, if you're not, fluid and flexible personally, and know that it's all right to practice John 12 and 36. Just hide yourself, as Pastor Hyde said, take yourself off of all the Zooms, all of that, just unplug so that you can return, retreat. You know, the practices of the enemy would retreat, he would regroup, and then he return. Well, I think if we practice there's a time for us to retreat, regroup, and then return. And we do that by being flexible and fluid in this time. The last thing I would say is to continue to create your own options and resources that use the resources that D-Free has provided personally as well as corporately, and know that this too will pass. This is not the end. We will get to a better place.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. It was so much knowledge, so much inspiration, so much tidbits we can take away. So thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having
Thank you
us.
so much. Yes. Thank you. Have an amazing day, everybody.
Thank you.